Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Goon Squad in the house.
Assemble.
Sup.
How was the Bahamas,
Fucking
Hunter?
terrible.
Yeah? Pretty bad?
Yeah, it got down almost 70 during the
Below
kind
zero?
of evening.
So the difference between here and there was
Yeah, there was
only
almost
roughly 100
90
degrees.
almost 90 degree difference between
With the wind chill, there were
Bahamas.
definitely moments where it was 100 degrees warmer where you were, which
yeah.
is a little silly.
Yeah,
That's not
Yeah, I
okay.
heard.
Little
I heard
silly.
it was good.
You hear about the
those
slab at the
2
gym?
days. Slab?
Yeah, the concrete slab the gym sits on froze. So we couldn't have class on Saturday morning because we had no water.
Where the pipes split from the hot water heater. One goes cold to everything,
Yeah.
one goes hot. It just...
I did. I mean, I saw the text going through.
No,
and it was
no
like,
toilet water.
I was like,
Bring your
damn,
own toilet water.
that sucks. I just remember listening
Bring it
to.
with
You
you.
bring a bucket full of water.
Bring it with you.
People don't know that you can do that. A lot of
I
people
just
don't know that.
remember.
I grew up well, so I used to do that shit anytime I had no power. We had to do that.
I just laughed when I saw Kyle send the text message that was like, you should have seen everybody's face in the 7 a.m. class when it was like 2 minutes before the workout started and everybody
Panic
does
dump.
their fucking panic bathroom break and Kyle's like, wrong bitches, like nice
No
try.
bathroom.
We don't have toilets.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that made
excellent.
me smile internally. But no, it was a great time.
Quick trip.
Yeah, very quick. It was bless their souls for Palmer and Lizzie's souls for logistically organizing that, because it was like Nassau, it was two legs, like Atlanta, then to Nassau, then from Nassau to
You take like a pull jumper.
yeah,
Just
like a chartered flight from there, like a taxi to a boat to
Jet ski.
the key, and then, but it was great. We had almost like an island, like a little mini island to ourselves.
That's dope.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Palmer and Lizzie. I know one of you listens to the podcast, so shout out to you. We won't say who.
Yeah.
It's not
Lizzie
Palmer.
Lizzie said she mostly just likes the trolling jokes and the snack chat as of recently. So,
All right. Well,
but-
so as a wedding gift,
Okay, yeah.
snack chat. What do we got? You guys got to bring something to the table.
Snack chat.
I can't just carry you guys around. All my snack anecdotes.
All right. Well,
what'd you have at
we'll
the
talk
wedding?
about snacks at the wedding. How about that? So we were, we'll begin at the end. The
Tarantino.
the evening, like 11 p.m. dance time when people are like switching to water. They pulled out the French fries and chicken nuggets, like late night snacks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
How many nugs you have?
Most of them.
There's no nugs for anybody else.
I had some chicken nuggets
I've
and
seen
French
inebriated
fries.
Hunter eat chicken before. There's no chicken for
I've
anybody
seen
else.
Hunter eat chicken for 2 hours straight before.
There were chicken skewers. There were
Put Tyson out of
there were
business.
these holy fuck. There were these like little firecracker like sushi spoon bite. It was like the spoon you get for ramen.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a bed, like the sushi rice and like this little beef, like piece of beef. It was like beef sashimi.
Was it beef
on
or
top. It was beef. It was beef.
gets fired up?
It was so good. And they had like basically pizza bites. It was like they were walking around. It was like they're calling it like it wasn't not pancetta. It's another P word. I don't know. There was
Can't say on the
Porchetta?
porchetta maybe, but I was like, that's not whatever that is. That's actually just a bagel bite, and I ate like 7.
Oh yeah,
of those.
it's like the person who's got like bread and ketchup, and they talk about the like wheat that was used in the tomato reduction. And
yes,
yeah,
very fancy tomato reduction.
I don't know if I have anything. I'm trying to think. Sure, but let's go.
The only thing that's gotten me recently in snack chat trouble is that I found out that Chipotle delivers to the Wyndham gym, which is terrible because I didn't need to know that information, because now if I need food at a whim, I can have a Chipotle burrito at the Wyndham gym in 5 minutes.
Here's the question. Here's the
terrifying.
question. That is good news.
terrifying.
Here's the question. You're in an airport food court. What are you going with?
Beef jerky from a vending machine 10,000
Well,
years ago.
so
I went
as
to Smash Town on Panda Express last night.
yeah,
On the way back.
is this gluten Drew or not? I haven't.
no restrictions.
I haven't.
Whoever you want to be.
I haven't eaten it on purpose in 12 or 13 years.
Panda?
No. Jesus. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot longer.
Yeah.
I probably haven't had Panda Express in 20 years, 15, 20 years, somewhere in that range. I did have a little bit in college. Honestly, probably like a McDonald's, Burger King, Johnny Rockets, like a chicken tenders and fries situation.
Yeah.
That's what Gluten Drew would do.
Nice.
Me, I literally have to eat chips and beef jerky. It's like the only thing
That's
in,
not true.
in
That's
most
not true.
airports that I can
We
eat.
went to that Miami that one time. We went and spent $85 on a cheeseburger and like sweet potato fries that one time. Wasn't that Miami we were going to? We went to that burger joint. There was like one person working behind the counter, and we got the bill. And we're like, we literally bought 2 cheeseburgers.
Oh
and
my
fries.
goodness. No, we were at LAX.
And that was where it was,
Yeah,
LA.
we were at LAX. We were going to Hawaii, right?
Yeah, no, yep.
And we found a burger spot. It was weird too, because it was like COVID-ish times. So like
What's the trail one we went on?
yeah. But you went a day late, remember? You stayed to surf in Maine instead of
that's
going to
right.
Hawaii. Yeah. That's what happened.
Never forget.
That's still one of the best swells that has ever hit Maine.
Sick, bro. You don't know.
Sick. You wouldn't understand.
And it was like a ghost town. Like it was weird walking around there. All of the shops were closed. There was no
Yeah.
one there. And there was this like oasis, this little burger spot, or so we thought. Gluten-free buns. We're like, wow, this is incredible. Literally, we each spent like $50 getting basically what you like a combo meal.
slider.
Yeah. And then it was trash.
So bad.
It was trash. You know, like a smash burger that's not a smash burger? It's just a thin patty that's not cooked.
I don't know that, but yeah.
Like gray meat. Oh, it was bad.
Got
was
it.
really
It was
bad.
not a good
Sashimi cheeseburger.
This is LA. Yeah, that wasn't good. That wasn't good at all. Ahem. All right. So we have a Q&A podcast today. We are going to answer some questions for anybody that's tuning into one of these for the first time. We solicit questions from Instagram and our Discord. We like to put Discord first because those are people that are actively participating in the community. You can also actively participate in the community for free. Discord.gg/Misfit Athletics. Get in there, chat with the coaches, chat with the people that are following the same programming as you. And as we like to say, go find your virtual training partner. Go find the people that are, sort of working on the same things as you and getting similar times, and base all of your good stuff on that. I would like to do one question first that I was asked to cover by quite a few different people. Hinshaw scared everybody last week when he said on Instagram, he's talked about what is wrong with Zone 2 training. And I immediately got tagged by multiple people. So I just put a generic response in there of if you warm up properly and you base your wattage targets on historical data, none of what he's saying will matter for your sessions.
What did he say?
He's basically saying, it was out of context, so we don't have the whole clip, but clickbaity enough for aerobic capacity to put it up. And basically, if a CrossFitter goes in and goes really hard at the beginning of a Zone 2 session to get their heart rate up and then gets slower and slower and slower as they go, you're training your musculature essentially to start, go out hot and then slow down, which is definitely not staying below aerobic threshold, especially considering what you're doing to your muscle fibers. One thing that I will say as a catch-all is the more information that you have about this stuff, the easier it is to mitigate any of the things that he's talking about. So one of the things that we're currently working on that you'll see in the programming soon is essentially it's not different than Maffetone and it's not different than Zone 2, but it combines the concepts to a point where you are guaranteed to go in and stay under threshold and follow a linear progression model to add some wattage to whatever machine you're on. Now, in the short term, if you are actually worried about this and you listen to it, this happens a lot on the C2 bike for people. They struggle to get their heart rate up to a certain spot. But the good thing here, and to sort of flip it to the other side of the coin, is the C2 bike is a place where you can really manipulate musculature. So it's pretty easy for me to say, wow, this isn't true. So if you go to our website and you follow our programming, you're going to notice that we have a 15-minute warm-up that is built in every single time. I am of the mind that if you're not doing this warm-up, you're not really doing a MAP session. And there's actually another question, and we'll explain a little bit more about warm-ups further down the line here. But we have a 15-minute warm-up, which is a really easy way to get up into that target zone. And then basically the two things that you want to pay attention to is once you have enough data, if I'm doing 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever, what my average wattage is. I'll go into a session and basically have multiple ceilings and floors. And basically what you do is, okay, I averaged 140 watts last week across the entire thing. Hopefully you were just at 140, but we'll get there. So you have a few choices. I feel like absolute dog shit today, probably go 135. I feel normal, 140. I feel great, 145. And we're basically going in and doing that. So you have set a ceiling. What I like to do with the ceiling is to also set my RPM ceiling there. So if I have a goal of setting a new sort of wattage record, I'm feeling really good. I had good sleep. Maybe I'm coming off a rest day. I will add 5 watts, but I will make sure that the damper setting is such that when I'm at 90 RPMs, I am exactly at my new target. So last week I hit 140. This week I want to hit 145. 90 RPMs gets me 145. That way I know that because I want to stay between 85 and 90, that I can trend back towards 85 if that wasn't the best idea. And we're still pretty close wattage-wise to where we want to be. So basically you stay in that scenario, you just stay between 85 and 90 based on your historical data, and you have your heart rate, you have it around, you know where it's going to be. I mean, if you have a Garmin, it can tell you, it will buzz you. If you get below or above the heart rate zone that you want to be in, you can connect your heart rate monitor to the C2 monitors. You can put it on your phone and, have your phone nearby. Whatever you do to monitor your heart rate, that is the other ceiling there. So we know, from the research that Dr. Maffetone did, that you are going to stay within your aerobic underneath that threshold if you are there. But that is as high as we want to go. That is the ceiling of where we're at. So basically we go in and, hopefully over the course of time, if you put enough time in on your zone 2 stuff and your Maffetone stuff, your running pace or your wattage, whatever it is, just goes up sort of little by little. And the good thing is the people who report that they are not making significant improvement on this, pretty good chance they're not following what I'm saying currently and could stand to start thinking about it that way. But they also notice a massive benefit within their actual Metcons and workouts because they are staying there.
So I've never worked with an athlete who's told me that this stuff's not working if they are following the warm-up protocol. The people that I've had conversations with, like getting frustrated over math stuff, there are people who are like, I had 6 minutes. So I did like a 2 minutes to rev my heart rate up really fast. And then I started and I was like, I'd rather you like push that to a day where you can give it its proper treatment of warm-up, hydrate, mobility, then do your session. It doesn't make any sense to jam this in. And one of the things I've actually seen, not a ton, but a couple of times on Discord, is people like had time for a 25-minute math or like a 18-minute math. And it's like, it's good that you're thinking about getting that work into your programming, and it's awesome. Congratulate you on doing that. But I'd rather see you potentially pluck out a couple of things from your day if you really think that's a major gap in your game, to spend time on that as opposed to being like, I fit a 15-minute math session at the end of my thing. Because that's, I don't want to be rude, but like a glorified cool down for a lot of people if you're doing it that way. It's not really the benefit we're going for when we talk about a math session.
I mean, and instead of calling somebody else out, I'll call myself out. I didn't have time for this. I didn't have time for that. How many episodes of whatever did I watch at night? What did my screen time look like throughout the day? It can feel like these giant chunks of time are sort of weird to have placed within your day, but if it is a priority, it will happen. Like, it just sort of is what it is. So, essentially my goal with saying that is to let people know, like, you're doing the right thing. We just need to make sure we fine tune it. And one of the things that can happen is we in this room can make an assumption that other people are thinking about things in a similar way that we are. And then when we see large groups of athletes say, hey, I'm having this issue, clearly we need to put the information out there for people to go and succeed. Because a lot of athletes kind of just, hey, I'm paying you guys. I want to show up and know what I'm supposed to do and just do it.
Yeah.
That's where I want to put my eggs. I get it.
Yeah. What we got for questions today?
Let's find out. All right, Sherb, this is for you.
All right.
No, it's not. Hunter, you asked me this question.
Crap. Fuck. You just answered that.
Reverse.
Drew, how come we don't use leaderboards? I love the Discord channel, but sometimes wish I could put my scores and see how I stack up.
All right, Danny Rivera, because you asked and because people listening to this podcast are, sort of VIPs, insiders, we are adding fitter to the equation. And this has been a longer term goal of ours. And one of the most exciting parts of it is we are paying for it. You are not paying for it as athletes. It is part of your subscription. We're still working out some of the kinks, just in terms of like the technology side of things. But basically, we are going to have one single place for athletes. Basically, you can comment in Discord, comment on the website, or in Fitter. Those will be the 3 places that you can do that. And we've got the opportunity with Fitter to have historical data that we can call upon. It is very much an upgrade from any of the stuff that we've used in the past, and the reason why we chose it. Does percentages for you. It can even do, maybe like row pacing or something to that effect. We can have, challenge posts where we're putting, someone else's score is already up on a leaderboard and you guys can go in and chase somebody else. So, really looking forward to that. It is coming in the very near future. It is something that has been a goal of ours again for a very long time, to consolidate and get into one spot. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And again, really want to reiterate, it is part of your membership. This isn't something like some of the other things that we've, partnered with in the past where you've had to go pay in addition and do that. That is something where we are paying as part of your membership. All right, sure. Ooh, it's a long one.
Thank goodness I don't have to
see if I can read this. That. Hey, everyone. Really enjoy the podcast. Started listening after one of our coaches recommended it. Question is this. Started CrossFit in 2020, but always did some kind of high intensity interval training workouts in the gym, play pickup hockey. Ooh, Hunter's ears are perked up here. He loves to surf. He loves beef and chicken. Basically having GI issues in the middle of workouts. To take our 6:15 a.m. class, and like clockwork in the middle of the WOD, I'm beelining the bathroom. I stopped taking any kind of pre-workout in the morning because it made it worse. I only drink water, beta-alanine, and some elements sometimes prior to class. Any advice would be appreciated.
Immediately comes to mind that you might be putting unnecessary stress on your body, and a common stress response is an upset GI. And we see this with athletes ahead of a workout, like just as affiliate coaches. You do your warm up, you get everybody ready to go, and you're like, all right, guys, 3 minutes, we're starting the workout, and all of a sudden the gym's empty. You're like, fuck did everybody go? And everyone's in the bathroom. So the first thing I would pay attention to is just like your stress response. Are you making sure that for many is like intense outputs like CrossFit you have in your life? Do you have some on the other side of that coin that are more like relaxation, like meditation or yoga or stretching or breath work? Because it sounds to me like you're creating unnecessary stress in your body, and you might want to address like, am I, without saying like self-creating it, but like, are you putting extra pressure on yourself? And that's one of the reasons why your body is reacting like this to you. Like, do you have to get a certain score? Do you have to beat a certain rival in the gym? That's kind of where my mind goes with this, because those are the people that I often see when I'm coaching class are the people that go to the bathroom, the people that put that extra layer of like, I got to do a certain performance in this class, and make sure I'm ready to do that, I have to go to the bathroom first. So that's kind of where my mind goes to at first. And second thing would just be like, what does your nutrition look like the night before? Are you eating things that potentially are upsetting to your stomach? Or maybe you've never checked and got like the blood work done or any of those, like, I don't know if 23andMe does any sort of food reactivity to it, but like, are those type of things happening? And then you basically don't know that you're allergic to potentially something you're eating. And that's why this is happening every morning once you start to like stress your body out with exercise.
I don't really have anything to add. I was going to say that
I have like a 45-minute answer.
Yeah, why don't you get after
that I'm going to try to pare down. Yeah, right, I'm going to try to pare it down a little bit. So Ted and Sherb, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a morning movement article on the website.
Yes.
Yes. So you're going to go to the website, you're going to click on blog, and you're going to find the morning movement article. This could potentially be something where your body is not waking itself up with the correct, sort of adrenal blood pressure response in the morning. Your element will help with that. I personally would go with proper hydrate.
Tastes way better.
Yeah, I just would personally. Properfuel.co, use the code word Misfit. And so that would be one thing that I would take pretty seriously, is just this idea of waking myself up first, because if your first big stress response is at the gym, that could have something to do with it. In the gym, you have the opportunity to sort of use linear progression on RPE. Don't make fun of me. Just this idea of going in and doing a Metcon at 60% and seeing if this still happens, and then 70 and then 80. And sort of what that does is it puts the onus back on. You are there to move and be healthy and not be as stressed about the workout. Another thing, the GI issues themselves should be something to address. Just thinking in general about how your personal digestion is. Do you struggle with digestion outside of this window? And there are a bunch of different ways to do something about that. Feel free to shoot me a DM. Last but not least, and this could literally just be a quick fix. I've only ever heard of this in one other person, but if Max Bragg takes beta-alanine pre-workout, he vomits it fucks his stomach up like you would not believe. I was
going to say that's the other variable.
But what's cool here is beta-alanine is a saturation ingredient like a creatine. Beta-alanine is not the kind of thing that you need to take right before you exercise. We want to be in that 5 to 6 gram per day range, and we reach saturation, and then you start to see the effects afterwards. So if you can handle beta-alanine outside of that window and take it every single day, I know people don't like doing that because when you get the tingles and you're not exercising, it's weird, but the more you take it, the less you get the tingles. So honestly, I think that's probably what it is. And again, saturation ingredients like that, if they need to be moved outside of that workout window, it's fine. You take them every single day, basically indefinitely, and that's how they work. 45 minutes?
Done.
Time.
All right, Misfits, just a quick break to shout out our show sponsors. We would love for you guys to go to these websites, use these codes. It is the best way to support the podcast. So if you're a fan, we would really appreciate the support. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Misfit Athletics Quarterfinals Prep Camp. We're getting really close, March 4th and 5th. Tickets are actually starting to get close to selling out. We want you to show up, though, on March 3rd and do 23.3 with the crew at Misfit Gym Portland. I've said it. I'm going to say it again. The atmosphere, the camaraderie, the community aspect of it is number one, the best part of camp. You're going to learn a ton of stuff. You're going to get some good workouts in, but there's something really special about the atmosphere of a camp that's got a bunch of misfits in it. And we do already have a lot of signups, so it will be a great group. Misfit.camp.
We're also brought to you by Proper Fuel. You can head to properfuel.co, use the code word Misfit to save on your order. This podcast is all about getting a little bit more information, a little bit of peek behind the curtain, asking those questions about how to get more from your training. Well, if you're looking to get more from your training and you want to make sure you have quality supplements, you can head to Proper Fuel. You can get your hydration supplement, your pre-workout with or without caffeine, and your post-workout nutrition. So you get the protein and carbs, creatine, and all the other good ingredients that help make sure you get the most from your training. And again, you can head to properfuel.co, use the code word Misfit to save on your order.
And last but not least, we are brought to you by Sharpen the Axe. Some new swag just dropped, some of the little by little gear, a nice new tan hoodie from Sharpen the Axe, and I think probably my favorite short design to date with the axe right on the sleeve. I'm very much a kind of less is more when it comes to the apparel, so I'm a big fan of the new swag. You can head to sharpentheaxeco.com, use your favorite athlete code to hook them up. We're getting closer to the season, the time of year where those athletes need your support so that we can help fund their travel to semifinals of CrossFit Games so they can focus on doing what they've been training to do. Again, sharpentheaxeco.com, use your favorite athlete code. Let's get back to the questions.
All right, Ryan McKay, how does one enjoy the open/quarterfinal season without doing the open? It's a time to test fitness and all that fun stuff, but being injured has me sidelined the whole season. Tips to help evaluate fitness and mindset shifts moving forward to an affiliate athlete.
So as somebody I'm still my hip's still been bothering me, and I'm like, we're getting closer to the open here.
Excuses. Fuck, Sherp's finally going to beat him.
Mine was pretty jacked up too.
What about coaching? What about, so I was like thinking to myself, like, if I'm not able to like really get after it, I have at least a handful of athletes at the affiliate who have been like working really hard. And we know Ryan, he's like been a remote athlete for a while now. I think something you could look into, ultimately, I think what you're seeking is maybe like a purpose, right? It's like normally your purpose might be to display the fitness that you've kind of worked hard for over the past year, but having been kind of seriously limited as far as what you can do. I would say maybe you find that in helping somebody else, like using your experience to have like everything that you have done. You know a lot about CrossFit, you know a lot about how to execute these types of workouts. And if you're kind of shifting towards maybe becoming that affiliate athlete, you will immediately kind of become probably one of the, higher, someone kind of up there on the hierarchy as far as affiliate athletes go. And you have the potential to, basically give those people, maybe people who are a little bit lower level than you, who are going after their open for the first time or their second time, or really trying to do the best that they can, but don't have the experience with things like strategy and warm up and like kind of just execution. I think you might be able to find kind of a purpose in coaching, in helping athletes, using your experience to help them out.
It's been a long time since I've been able to participate in the entire open. I would say your answer is pretty spot on. Just that energy and that vibe that you get this time of year. Go into it knowing that you are sort of helping other people and participating in the community vibe of it. You're judging. Ryan likes to joke a lot, but he is a very thoughtful guy and athlete. And I think he could have insights for other people within those moments. So use that and just stay part of the community, even though you can't necessarily do it. And then one thing that is really cool, and we've talked about this with like quarterfinals prep camp, being in the room with the like-minded individuals, you get these little bouts of like extra motivation during these times, and you can go find how and where you can test yourself. After you watch Mighty Ducks, you can go fucking rip some roller hockey balls in your driveway. Like when athletes come into town and you get that juice, you go do the cube test, or I go do something where I'm like, I need to ask a little bit more of myself in this training piece. So I would say involve yourself in the community and then find a way to test yourself if you get that like jolt.
All right. Heather, Misfit member, asks grip on machines. So there's a kind of
why are you asking me?
Similar part question. Easy guy. Yeah, you need that gripper over there. One, rowing hurts my hands. I overextended my thumb in a recent row sprint workout. 2, my hands always go numb while C2 and in real life road/mountain biking. Any advice for those? ? And lastly, when on the assault bike, let's go with the first two because they're kind of related. And
sure.
Then we'll third one we'll answer.
Yep. With the rowing, I asked someone who was a rower, and he basically said you need to row more. It's the kind of thing where you might need to, if you did have an injury from wrapping the thumb or, potentially having the thumb in line with the handle. There are different positions where, depending on how far you're rotating your hand, you could put over the course of, strokes per minute times however many minutes you're on there, you could put undue strain on there. But the hurts my hands part, I had this exact same question and was told to row. And there's no, some people try to wear gloves, that creates more friction. It gets worse. Basically tape over the spots that are sort of the touch, and you get over it by rowing more. I think most people have felt what you're talking about with your hands going numb on the C2 bike. It's really about making sure that you're rotating hand positions. Your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders, a lot of spots on your body are kind of a poor design. You're basically putting a bunch of cables through a really tight pipe is the way that I would think about it. There's so much going on in there that things can be restricted, and especially if there's any scar tissue or something's overdeveloped or underdeveloped, nerves can get pushed on. So you, again, rotate those positions. And then the only thing that I would say for people who deal with that numbness a little bit too much is cold therapy and hot therapy are both really good for sort of reintroducing really good vasodilation and constriction in feet and hands.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to add to the kind of looks somewhat similar as far as like just discomfort in like your upper extremities, and like the positions that you kind of get put in on a rower, being seated and then on a bike, like are kind of similar. So I would consider like either pre or post, workout, making sure that you are taking care of tissues that like a lot of the nerves that run like down your hand, like up in the shoulder, like underneath your lat, like subscap area. Like if you're in like a really sloppy position for an extended period of time for no other reason than that's just how you're seated on the machine, like you might start to get some sort of compression on like a nerve or something that's going to cause that numbness and tingling. So along with the rotating positions, like probably some soft tissue work prior to getting started.
Yeah, you could also potentially look into neural flossing. This is something I actually experienced with like overhead squat. People complain about pinkies going numb when they overhead squat, and it's typically because tissues are getting compressed. So if you like do a quick YouTube on like numb fingers and neural flossing, you can find like activities, and they are as silly as like putting one ear to the other shoulder and kind of rotating a hand back and forth.
It works.
Switching sides, but it works. Again, I'm not any sort of expert when it comes to neural flossing, but I've tried these videos for myself when I've experienced this, and it's fixed them. So like, I would consider looking up just some neural flossing videos, and there are a handful of them on YouTube.
And you'll be able to tell too if it's that, or if like sometimes your hand goes numb and it's like, well, it's very obvious that I am constricting blood flow by jamming my hand where all the veins are into the handle. And you gotta, the amount of times that I open and close my hands, spending hours a week on the bike, like it just happens.
You gotta do,
putting all of your weight on your
third portion of the question. Lastly, when on the assault bike, do you think of it as a pull or punch/push from the arms, or do you change it up?
So this is an interesting question because I have an answer to a different question. You push and pull the whole time. Now, obviously, if you are doing push-ups or strict pull-ups or something that is so obviously the same movement pattern, you can then decide to do one more than the other, but it is a push-pull every single time. If I'm using both arms and I'm pushing and pulling, I can spread around the musculature and what is happening and how I am creating momentum. Now, with that being said, your seat position, how close to the handles you are, how far away from the handles you are, should be changed quite a bit. And you figure out what is harder on the lower body, what is harder on the upper body for you with your technique, so that you can game different workouts when you have bike front squat or you have bike handstand push-up. This makes a massive difference. So if you are like really like, this sucks, I've got to do whatever, lunges or something like that after I get off the bike, I set my seat further away and I make it much more intentional of using my upper body to push and pull the entire time. Obviously, you're still using your legs, but then again, in this opposite scenario where you really want to rely on your legs, I move that seat up a little bit more, rely a little bit more on the quad, and, get after it and sort of ghost ride the upper body a little bit more.
Next.
Similar question to Ryan. How does one deal with the mental shift / slight guilt that comes with realizing you'll have to prioritize other things over the open? Med school exams for this block run through 2 out of the 3 weeks of the open, and I don't know if I'll be able to carve out the time to complete all the workouts and much less put the focus into them that they deserve.
It's a funny way to kind of end that question, like the focus that they deserve, because like it almost works in the opposite way in my regard, in my mind about this like question. And that is like, it's perfectly acceptable to have other goals that do not relate to fitness. And it's hard because we're coming from a fitness community and we are a fitness podcast. And like, that's kind of like, how we make our living. But I think everybody at this table, and Ted included over there, have had times where certain things are priorities. And then as
we're a
you
health
age,
and fitness podcast.
And then you decide to go and potentially have
Snack
other
We're a snacking podcast.
other priorities. And there's, that guilt that you're creating is, I think, unfair to yourself, essentially. I think that it's okay to care about something. And the fact that you feel a little guilty means that you care a lot about it. But you also care about doing really well in your med exams, and you have to ask yourself, well, what is the higher priority right now? And I think like your long-term career outweighs the potential gain of like, all right, let's put these exams, let's do next year's exams and do the open this year. Like you would feel the same exact way the following year. So, kind of being in those shoes, right now or like in the past, like when you shift priorities, it is perfectly acceptable to have different goals, and that means you can kind of put more effort into something else versus the thing that you used to do. To me, it's just a sign of maturity, and like kind of going back to Ryan's question, like you can find other ways to lean into the community and find other ways to find enjoyment in the open that isn't necessarily just performance based.
My answer to this is a little bit more like kind of bigger focus. Like I guess I can't assume this, but I would assume that you would have known this multiple months ago. Like I'm assuming those exams are planned far enough in advance and the open dates are far enough in advance that you're like, this is going to be a problem.
I mean, I lost my syllabus most of the time.
Yeah. Well, you weren't applying to medical school, respectfully.
Well, that?
Construction management bachelor's isn't the same as med school.
I was duped.
So it's
Stop the
like,
recording.
so do like ask yourself, like being honest with yourself, did you know that was going to happen like far enough in advance? And therefore what should that have been addressed as far as like, what is my priority going to be? Or maybe it is just like it's like, hey, your exams are this date. And if that's the instance, then I would say like one, open workout realistically could take like an hour out of your day. There's plenty of benefit to stop like taking time. Again, I don't know what the procedure as far as the exams go, how long they are, but I can't imagine they run like 12 hours straight for multiple days. You have a Thursday, you have a Friday, you have a Saturday, you have a Sunday, you have a Monday to do it. So is just the thought of doing two important things in your life making it seem more overwhelming than it actually is when it comes to like the day of? It's like, oh, I do happen to have 2 hours and I do have a friend who will happily come in and judge me, and I can do this workout, and it'll also be a good mental break from kind of the rigors of having to deal with these exams. So I think maybe like the overarching stress might be maybe is like you're maybe like allowing it to take over a little bit more than it needs to when it comes to just like literally carving out time to do this workout and then go back to focusing on what I assume is more important than this year's open in medical school exams.
I mean, it sounds like pretty standard FOMO to me. I would just flip it upside down and be like, hey, like I have much more FOMO for you being in medical school with like how amazing that is versus the open. I think a lot of times
the open will be here next year too.
Exactly. The open will be around. The workouts will be around. You can go test them, after the fact if you feel like you weren't able to give it, your best shot. And then, you're in medical school. So I bet you can figure out where your scores would have been on the leaderboard and have a really good, concept of where you're at.
What's also really cool, the leaderboard these days, is they have the hashtags where you could see potentially other people who are in medical school and how you stack up against them. And you could have a different community versus the worldwide open. You'd be like, how many other people are in my circumstance that are also doing med school and the open? Oh shit, look at that. I'm like top 3 in the world in medical school doing the open. That's pretty fucking cool. Next. All right, Chad Scott 82. Sorry, the glare's a little rough over here. I never really have any questions for these that pop up. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading it because of the glare.
Usually get answered via Discord
moron.
I can't see the screen.
or the podcast. So thank you.
The bottom half?
Stop talking. Two-parter. Overall strength is something I always need to work on. Is it detrimental on the central nervous system or in other ways to work 2 major strength lifts per cycle? For example, snatch and front squat. And would the back squat weakness template be as effective for other lifts such as jerks or deadlifts?
Just me.
Yeah.
I can't read.
Is it detrimental to the CNS? So your 2 examples specifically, the snatch and the front squat, I would say no, that's not. I think you could effectively do that, but as with any sort of like big shift in training, especially swinging towards like major lifts, the little things like your recovery, across the board need to be on point. And when we're talking about the like complex lifts like that, things like mobility, making sure that you're able to like you're hitting the lifts that you need to and getting into the positions that you want. If you were saying like, should I do the back squat volume cycle and deadlifting at the same time? Like that's probably a no. And then kind of your second example, what would back squat weakness template be as effective for other lifts such as jerks or deadlifts? Probably not. Just the way that the program is structured, especially a jerk. It's just a different thing. And deadlifting typically is done in quite a bit lower volume across the board, like in a daily session and across like a week on average than a back squat, for example. So I would be cautious of mixing and matching and just plugging different words into different programs and being like, this should work.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is there are high CNS focused lifts in every single phase dating back, so it wouldn't be very hard to go onto the website and look at those things. I am happy to put more of the high CNS lift type stuff into the weakness templates. My personal rule for most athletes, if they are actively competing, would be like 3 days a week, like a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday type of rotation with central nervous high CNS. I really don't want an athlete going in and obliterating themselves with something like that on back-to-back days. Now, like Hunter said, there's definitely a hierarchy here. Like a high CNS deadlift versus a high CNS snatch they could not be more different. There is no such thing as a high CNS jerk situation. If you tried to figure out how to do that and your limbs survived,
your arms fall
I would be very impressed. We use back squats and cleans and deadlifts and power cleans or whatever. We use stuff like that to manipulate the musculature needed to do a high CNS type of jerk, like for a single session. Now, two other things. This doesn't mean that you can't lift heavy. Lifting heavy isn't always fry your CNS. We have the heavy days, your 4x1s in the 80% range, depending on what the lift is, not necessarily a massive demand on your central nervous system. And I mean, almost everyone now is wearing an Apple Watch, a Whoop, or a Garmin. Like, look at your HRV. Your HRV is going to be in the shitter if you do too much. It's not hard to recognize that. That's not really that much of an issue there. And then I will just quickly plug the changes to the Hatchet program. The Hatchet program is getting its own strength and a strength biased version of the program all the way through the entire offseason. Once you guys are done with your quarterfinals prep and you are done quarterfinals, and this will answer honestly a lot of questions here, there'll be 2 lifts per day. And we are going to show you guys how, within your choices, how to strength bias and how to conditioning bias your program. So I think this will take care of a lot of these questions. You're going to have the opportunity to lift quite a bit. And as always, just the asterisk here, if you don't move well, it may or may not work.
Yeah, that was the only other thing I was going to add. If your first 2 examples are snatch and the front squat, immediately I'm like, oh, got it. The 2 most extreme ranges movements with ranges of motion that are difficult to achieve. So is it a legitimate strength thing, or is it access to potential strength with better positioning?
I also think about what your goals are. Are your goals to compete in the sport of CrossFit? Can you lean into this stuff a little too far and potentially take yourself out of the sport of it's conditioning based? I know you wrote an article about how strong you need to be to do the CrossFit games, but that becomes that shiny object.
I was out of date 6 minutes after it published. I'm so goddamn strong nowadays.
But the idea here is that if you start leaning into one thing way too far, that you neglect the other ones, like what your big picture goal was might get missed because you're leaning too far into one direction.
Okay, Mike Kern, Masters athlete, podium guy. Any guideline percentage check behind the Misfit sets for movements? The 4. So for those that aren't sure, Misfit sets is basically you've got a movement. You do 4 sets of that movement for a number of reps that you can do basically perfectly and very smoothly, and then 1 set where you reach beyond that, where you kind of get your volume. So you push a little bit farther. Maybe it's not completely perfect, but you get 1 big set. So it's 5 total sets. Any guideline percentage check behind Misfit sets, meaning is there a percentage that the max set should be of the smooth sets to check capacity? If I do sets of 6 and then don't get double that, 12 for the max, does that mean my smooth sets were too big? Basically, how do I pick my numbers for the Misfit sets format without
Yep. I'm just looking at the final part here. Yeah. So there's a couple reasons why we do misfit sets. Big sets are important and smooth technical sets are important, but also we just talked about central nervous system, which leads into volume and all these other things. Athletes aren't going to be able to intuitively guess at a granular level, like how are my toes to bar misfit sets going to go today? So we want to get this misfit sets is sort of 5 smooth sets disguised as 4 smooth. And then like, how am I feeling today? Where am I at? You actually hit the nail on the head. I don't know if you already knew this or if you read this somewhere else, but that double number is important here. So if you are doing your misfit sets, and Mike has the example here of, let's say he's doing muscle ups, he does 4 sets of 6, knowing that he can do more than 6 in his final set. If he does double that, that's when we know it's time to move up in your first sets. I would just tell him to go to 7s the following week, and we continue to follow that progression there. There are caveats to this, though. Volume does matter. The amount of reps you do does matter. So if I have an athlete who I'm coaching and they have the capacity to do some ungodly amount of a movement, whether it be GHD sit-ups or toes to bar muscle ups, within this, I will put a cap on them. Like, you do get something out of 4x10 muscle ups and then a set of 15. Like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And is it worth it for someone who's, really already crushing that movement to go in and obliterate themselves in that way? So you do want to make sure that you do the math out on what your goal is and ask yourself, like, is this going to kick my ass? Like, people know, like, I've had multiple weeks where the, 6x25 GHD sit-ups has buried someone, and it's clear that they just haven't done as many in a while. So we're going to continue to do that to get them to a point where it is okay. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you have the capacity to do something, but you haven't been doing it as often, or it's going to crush your, volume for the day, you're really going to pay attention to those things.
Yeah, my only add, the fact that I'm doing these a bunch, is that, like, you really want your smooth sets to be smooth. So, like, I think a big onus on taking time to make sure that you're still warmed up, that you're activated, and you're actually really, really smooth and clean looking with your movements, so that you don't put the cart before the horse. Because I think it's really easy for an athlete to be like, 4 is not enough. Like, let's say muscle ups, for example. When am I ever going to only use 4 muscle ups? That's not very useful. The point there is that you're getting technical refinement in those first 4 sets. And then, because you are technical in the first 4 sets, there's less undue fatigue, which allows you to reach a bit bigger on your final set. So, the max set should, still have an asterisk on it. Like, when you're going for a max set, we still don't want to go to the absolute point where it's, by the end, you're like, oh, that's not the same movement anymore. And to use linear progression, because that's the thing that's been helpful for me the most, is that, like, maybe the first week it's 4, 4, 4, 4, and then 8. The next week doesn't need to be 5, 5, 5, 5, and then 10. It could be 5, 5, 4, 4, and then 8 again. The idea here is, over time, is that you still get more reps accumulated in your session across the entire phase, as opposed to, like, making big jumps. I do think it's really tempting. It's something I've actually been working with Alexis on, because, like, she'd tell me her smooth set of toes to bar is 30, and then her max set's 32. And I'm like, we're not quite getting the concept here. And again, it's because she wants to overreach and get a decent amount of volume because she's good at the movement. But I'm like, let me see what they look like. And when I saw a video, I was like, all right, now I get a little bit more perspective on, like, how these are actually going. And it just brings up a conversation of, like, hey, what's going to move the needle most for you? And it's not going to be just gutting out bad ones. It's going to be moving really well to be able to stay, in sync with teammates, for example, or stay within yourself so you can move on to the next thing and be smooth.
I do want to clarify a little bit. It is okay if you switch to 5s and it ends up being 5, 5, 4, 4, but we're not. That means that you probably chose a number that was too big. We don't want to get into 8, 7, 6, 6, 13. Like, we don't want that to happen. If you are going down in your smooth sets, that means that you chose a number that was too high.
I'll try again here. Knowles 3. Any specific advice on improving my overhead squat and squat snatch? I struggle with those 2 lifts as a whole and can do only minimal weight. I've been working on my mobility and try to snatch balance at least once a week.
You can ask Julia for some advice on this, but you need to probably come to camp, Misfit Athletics.
Not probably.
Misfit
Definitely.
Athletics training camp, March 4th and 5th, where you will spend a non-trivial amount of time sitting in the bottom of an overhead squat with an empty barbell over your grape. if you are not able to get to Misfit Camp, you should spend a non-trivial amount of time with an empty barbell over your grape. Literally starting with something like accumulating 2 minutes in the bottom of a sound overhead squat position with a PVC pipe if you have to, and gradually building that up to a training bar, and then an empty barbell, assuming the position looks good, and then you can go for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and that doesn't necessarily need to be all in one consecutive go. I tell people, like, when they're getting into that sort of thing, and you can do this with a front squat, with an air squat, with an overhead squat, whatever. You need to spend time in that position to get comfortable there. So while a snatch balance is a great exercise for snatch balancing, you're going to be better off by putting an empty barbell over your head and spending a lot of time in there.
And once you feel like you're good at that position too, you know, our warm-ups specifically for the squat snatch are extremely thorough. You could do that, you know, 2 or 3 days a week, even on the days you don't snatch, where you're like, you know what, I'm about to go do it.
Great, like, active recovery sort of like session.
Like, you're getting ready to do the overhead squat holds. You want to make sure you're ready to do that. Like, go through the entire squat snatch warm up that we have on our site, and then do the accumulate time in the bottom of your squat. Because, you know, always goes back to something you've told me years ago, but like, you don't have the right to complain about something until you've spent enough time really addressing the situation. And I'm not saying that you're not doing that, but like, a lot of times people think, oh, I do 10 minutes a day. That's good enough. It's like, well, you might need 30. And, you know, unfortunately, there's not like a perfect amount of time for every single person. We're all individuals. We're going to need different amount of time to get in those positions, just based on our personal history, that you might not have put enough time in just yet to say that you've kind of earned the right to be like, what's the fix? I can't figure it out. For a lot of people, it's just time spent in those positions.
Both of your answers are things that I make CrossFit Games athletes do. So this isn't some kind of like, oh, welcome to beginners. Like, you know, if you are above things like that, you're not going to get to the place that you need to. I have literally within the last week accumulate 7 minutes of air squat holds on Monday, front squat holds on Wednesday, overhead squat holds on Saturday, and then barbell therapy, which is the warm up you guys are talking about, in place of lifts. Like, you just do not put a bunch of weight on a barbell and sling that thing around in really shitty positions. You won't get any better at it. It will continue to get frustrating. So spend time in the positions, both statically, and then go through barbell therapy and really take the time to just become a technician with a barbell.
I'm 13 years into this, and you have this in my programming, 3 days a week. Got to spend, 21 minutes a week roughly with a barbell and some sort of squat. Like, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Fucking loser.
I got my squat mobility for like a very long time, drinking a cup of coffee in the bottom of the squat every morning, staring out the window at the sun. It works. I don't know whose turn it is, to be honest.
My turn. How does one determine, Tyler Shangaris? How does one determine the minimum effective dose for one to compete at their highest level of competition? What would be some ways you can determine you are moving the needle as much as possible with doing as little as possible? Asking due to age, time restrictions, recovery limitations, life. Hopefully this makes sense.
This does make sense. This makes a lot of sense. There are a few telling self-talk markers in there that I would try to be careful of, just in terms of like minimum effective dose is a good thing, but like, how can I do as little as possible might trick you into the mindset of thinking I'm trying to game this system. Doesn't exist. There's no secret to anything, like, ever. Basically, you make your way through high performers at any level, and they're like, yeah, I work harder than everybody else. And for some reason, society is obsessed with like the wonderkind who doesn't study, or like, oh, he's such a natural athlete. Like, the people, if you actually ask them, and thank God for people like Kobe and Michael, who's like, fuck you, no, I work way harder than you. I am also better than you, but I work way harder than you. So don't try to say, exactly. Yeah. So that would be one thing that I just picked out from that. But as a whole, it's a really good question. And I think people start on the wrong side of this question. They do too much volume and don't really understand why they aren't progressing. If you do too much volume and your personal life and your personal circumstances basically have you buried all the time and you're not recovering, it's not going to do anything at all. Exercise is catabolic. It beats you down. You need those anabolic windows to grow from what you're trying to do. Doing very little and going really hard and putting a lot of eggs into that basket and then slowly adding and seeing again if it, tanks your HRV, that sort of thing. It sounds to me like there's a pretty good chance that you need your HRV to be higher just for your daily life, which is most people. Like those days where you log in and you see those numbers, like you can feel it, doing spreadsheet work or working out in the gym. So I would just say it's really important for people to start low and then start to build from that point. That to me is always the easiest way to figure out like what is your minimum effective dose.
Yeah, and I always want to think about like goals and priorities. Like if you have a goal and you want to compete at the high level and you're not willing to prioritize the time that's necessary to make time for proper training windows and enough time to recover between things, and the fact that you're like older, maybe you can't withstand 3 to 4 hours of training every single day. You like to have a realistic expectation of like what you're able to do, and doing what you just said is the smart way to start small. Crush yourself with, 45 minutes, an hour of training a day. And when you do that for a long enough time where you feel like that you can do a little bit more, then you try a little bit more, as opposed to just, sinking 3 or 4 hours in the day and being like, I just did 6 pieces and I didn't have any time to actually warm up or cool down or hydrate or, stretch. All those other things that would make you a better athlete sometimes get put on the back burner because they don't feel like the meat and potatoes of like a training block or, any sort of training. But for a lot of athletes, that's what moves the needle more. It's the stress and the recovery from that stress.
As the resident minimum effective dose guy, I would just say that make sure that the training that you are doing has a purpose, not only like for your goals, but you also have kind of you have a goal within that training piece. Even if it's as simple as accessory work, if it's mobility work, you need to establish some sort of like metric for success. And the second thing, it kind of ties into the question but to compete at their highest level of competition, what is your highest level of competition that you want to compete at? And what would be some ways to determine you are moving the needle? It's like, again, what needle are you trying to move? What are the priorities that you're trying to do? Is it, I want to be as healthy as I am now, but be a better parent, coworker. I want to move up the ladder in my job. What is it? What's the metric for success that you're after? And then see if the training that you're doing is enabling you to balance both. Because right now you've got a question that says compete at the highest level of competition, but working around the parameters of basically everyday life, which indicates that there's obviously multiple priorities that need to be racked and stacked.
I see the 2 little kids in the photo too, which brought me to some of my conclusions.
Yeah, there you go.
This me?
Yep.
With the open coming, it still brings the normal competitive juices out. If you feel confident you'll advance beyond the open, how do you balance ego and the desire to redo an open workout? When is it okay to redo an open workout in the new open environment?
Oh, how telling. I should also ask this question.
Who are you answering this for?
Yeah, for myself.
You or Mike?
For me and Mike. Mike, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you don't need to redo any open workout, probably ever. However, one caveat there is that, I had a similar situation last year with the deadlift bar facing burpee workout where, historically burpees aren't a great movement for me, but deadlifts are. And I decided to
I could do that workout.
Pump the brakes on the deadlifts a bit and, did my performance on camera for everybody and lost 100 by 4 hours and got stuck in a workout that I thought I could finish. And it ate at me a bunch, and it was more of a not can I beat 100 at the workout, but like I feel like for my own sake, I should be able to finish this workout, and I'm not proud of my effort. Let me try again. That would be the only time I would say is if like there was some element to that you were like, I'm not proud of this, or I should have done this instead. And it was more of like a growing moment for you as an overall athlete, not a singular performance. That's when I'd say it's okay. But if it's just like, I want to be, the guy to my left, that's probably not a good enough reason to go and do the open workout again. This is what I think.
Yeah, I think the one scenario that I can think of is if you made a serious strategic error in your execution of the workout to the point where it's like, I did that wrong, and it would be more beneficial for me to redo this in order to gain accurate information for future use at more important levels of competition. Otherwise, the open workout for just about everybody, aside from the Hatchet squad or folks who are pursuing the online semifinal or in-person semifinals and games, the open workout is going to be one of 4 or 5 training pieces out of the day that is effectively just another Metcon.
You better have a real good fucking reason. Believing your own bullshit is kind of a silly thing. So an exercise that you can do before you go to your training partners or coaches is write your reason down on a piece of paper and get into a little argument with yourself. Like literally write it down, physically write it down. Don't type it into anything and be like, I'm going to read this to myself. It's a distraction. This is a distraction. In a vacuum, Sherb is 100% correct. There are reasons why we retest things. We go in and redo them. We do this all the time. Even if you're taking an affiliate class, your strategy was shit, or you didn't ask enough of yourself at a certain point, and the very first thing that everybody says is, I can't wait to redo this. Now, you rarely redo it because it's rarely a test, but just that mentality of that is a good thing to have. But if you get distracted during one of your final uninterrupted pieces of, blocks of training, you're going to have an issue down the road. So you could have a valid answer. And then once you put that into the scales with, what if this is the reason why I don't get my swimming session in and I don't get all my days in the pool in? And then even though I'm the best CrossFitter in my age group on earth, the pool sort of fucked me up a little bit. So maybe you replace it with that. Maybe if your answer's not good enough, you write down what you're going to do instead that is a better choice for that time. And obviously Mike is, trying to win the CrossFit Games this year, and basically every year. So priorities are a little bit different. This question this answer, I think, is very specifically for him.
To me asking it? All right.
We don't know.
Little Banan, 24. How your training week should look during the open?
So it depends on who you are and what kind of programming track you're following. If you're somebody who is basically like the open is their Super Bowl and you're trying to move on to quarterfinals, for example, then what we will typically recommend is that, you train normally Monday and Tuesday. You do kind of a flush or your active recovery on Wednesday. You do a short primer day on Thursday, and we have an article on the website that I think you wrote, right, Sherb, on how to execute a primer day.
Yep.
Which is pretty straightforward. And then you hammer your open workout on Friday, and then kind of reevaluate whether or not you need to redo it, or you just kind of pick back up with normal training on Saturday and then kind of restart. So basically your kind of rest day shifts to a Wednesday.
Or depending on when you do the workout.
The day before the workout is basically your primer day. The day before that is your flush day. For those athletes who are pursuing, who are confidently moving through the open and maybe even confidently through quarterfinals, your training week is going to look pretty similar up until the point at which we get towards like quarterfinals and then semifinals prep, in which that changes around. But as far as the open goes, depending on how many eggs you're putting into that basket, we typically say, like, if open workout is on this day, the day before that is a primer day, the day before that is a flush day, and the days preceding that are effectively normal training without beating the piss out of yourself.
True.
Technical malfunctions from Ted.
I think that's Jeopardy.
I think he started with something weird and then kind of switched to Jeopardy. Got real confused.
Who's gonna win the Super Bowl, boys?
Hunter.
This is gonna drop the day after the Super Bowl.
Who? Eagles and
who's in it?
Who's in the
Eagles?
I usually
Red
watch
Rockets.
the NFC and AFC championships, but I am not fucking tracking this.
Chiefs,
year.
Eagles.
Man,
Eagles
what's gonna
by
happen
6.
if the fucking Eagles win?
They
What's
are
going to
gonna
happen to
win.
the city of Philadelphia? If the
They
Eagles
are going to win.
They say they grease the light poles so that people can't get up them. Like that is a literal statement, and there are T-shirts that say it.
Grease the pole.
People say it's the #1 city in the entire country for a celebration after a championship.
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
I'm going to go Eagles
Is it
31,
this weekend or next
Chiefs
weekend?
21.
It's this weekend.
31-21 Eagles.
Sheesh.
What do you think?
the better quarterback wins the Super Bowl almost every time. But we don't know, is Jalen Hurts that guy? Because he looked like that guy this year. So now it's the question of, is he that guy?
I watched him back squat 600 pounds. That's all I needed to see.
I've watched Patrick Mahomes fire a fucking football between his legs with his feet off the ground, 89 yards, and hit somebody in the fucking grape.
That's true.
He's the most talented quarterback, I think, that I've ever seen play. I'm not saying he's the best, but he has surpassed Aaron Rodgers in my mind as the most talented guy that I've ever watched. He's basically fast Aaron Rodgers, if we're being honest. That's what he is.
He's way more athletic, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the stupid shit that he does with his arm, the plays that he makes are, yeah. So, I mean, do I have a future on the Chiefs? Yes. Do I have a future on the Chiefs beating the Eagles specifically also? Yes. But in the past, I have bet against the better quarterback, and I've lost. I bet on the better quarterback every time, and I win some of the time. Hey-o! Nope.
Bless you. Hunter, what's your prediction?
Fuck. Eagles 2-1 over 2-1 overtime, 2-1 in OT.
You can make a lot of money if you bet that.
I'm gonna,
PKs.
I bet if you
what would be the line on that? What if I bet
problem is you can't score
2-1? Would I
can't score 1 point?
That's true.
That's a problem.
3-2,
3.
But it would be, if you bet $100, you would probably make like $1 million at least.
$1 million.
Go put some.
Yeah.
Put $100
Like if you
down,
bet
3-2.
like 4-2,
4-2.
4-2. Can you match the Super Bowl? 4-2.
three safeties. Three safeties.
My God.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
Might do that.
4-2.
I might do that.
Sometimes that
Just
stuff
for
happens
fun.
though. First play of the, was it the Panthers that had the safety on their first play that year? Broncos Panthers?
Was it?
Wasn't it?
The Pats had against the Giants. Brady got sacked.
Wasn't the
2011?
Didn't the Bills game this year have some stupid score when it was like in 17 feet of snow? It was like
Was that this year or last year when Mac Jones threw 1 or 2 passes the whole game?
Last year.
Stevenson had like 40 carries. Yeah, the Patriots just did not throw the ball because they knew something bad would happen, and they won. Did they win? I think they won that game.
I think they did because Josh Allen also couldn't throw the ball. He's their offense.
You mean Brett Favre?
Okay. Danny Sakala asks, is doing burpees for a MAF acceptable in place of 15 minutes to get the heart rate up? That only takes 2 minutes.
All right. So for listeners, we've already covered this, but there is a 15-minute warm-up associated with math sessions that magically is also associated with every other conditioning piece that you do. If you come to a Misfit training camp, there's a good chance you're going to spend either 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 minutes on a machine to get started. Now, why do we do this? Obviously, she's providing a hack for us.
I see. It only takes 2 minutes to get my heart rate.
Yes,
up.
it only takes. I mean, I could get my heart rate
20 seconds. Watch this.
Yeah, into math zone. So that is one way to think about it. You could go do an assault bike sprint and then go start your workout. You all know what that would feel like, so you probably wouldn't do that. When we are at rest, our blood is circulating mostly around our organs. There's very little of it out in our limbs. And when we shock the system, we get an intense core contraction, which we don't want at the beginning of a workout, right? And it pushes the blood down to our legs because it thinks we're running away from a cheetah or something. When you do your 12 to 15 minute warm up, you are slowly sending the blood out to the entire body. It's delivering oxygen. It's removing waste particles. It is extremely important to how efficient you are. So while that is a thoughtful hack, it is the opposite of what we want to happen within this. The first time I read this, I was like, oh, this person can't get their heart rate up. Maybe they throw some burpees in between minutes 12 and 15. That would be totally fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. When I do an intense workout, I shorten my windows from 5 to 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes. And then I spend the next 3 minutes getting to what I would consider workout speed or beyond workout speed to really sort of get myself into that spot. So it takes a minimum of 12 minutes for your body to go through that process. And again, the reason is because our body likes to go through, zone 0, zone 0.5, zone 1, zone 1.5. When we slowly ramp up that way, again, you are delivering blood and oxygen to all of your tissues. And that can be one of those scenarios where you have an affiliate level athlete or, even a high level athlete with a low athlete IQ come to you and say, man, why does sometimes I just absolutely blow up at the beginning of a workout? It's like, we used to call it a sweat check. We've been doing this forever. We tell athletes, before you even warm up, we need you to go do 15 to 20 minutes slow on a machine. Now we have a more specific prescription. Both is fine. I just would monitor your heart rate every once in a while because, again, if we make those jumps, if you use the wrong machine, it's really hard to go slow enough on an assault bike without paying attention to your heart rate. You can get into the 150s and 160s by accident and go, or you can't, but
What's that like? Someone tell me.
It's not that great.
It's not that enjoyable.
TBH.
Next.
Sherb, can you give me some advice on training through a hand/wrist injury? Stellar Weller would also like to know.
Well, one thing we've talked about in the past is that any single movement isn't as important as the stimulus the movement provides. So when someone comes to me with an injury, the first thing I want to ask them is can we create a similar stimulus using what body parts are capable? Now, you're saying a bum wrist means you're probably trying to do something overhead or a burpee or something like that, and you're going to struggle to do that similar thing with your bum wrist. But you might be able to create, a similar adaptation when it comes to breathing heavy. If, let's say I had lots of burpees in the workout and you're like, you know what? I can't do burpees because my wrists are bum, but I want to get my heart rate up, but I can assault bike safely and it doesn't hurt my wrist. Well, then we can kind of trade maybe 1 for 1 there, 1 calorie on the assault bike equals 1 burpee. So, without knowing exactly what you're going through, Stellar Weller, I would just ask yourself, what about the workout is...
I hope that's your real name.
I do too. What about the workout am I specifically trying to work on? And can I create a similar stimulus without affecting the injured limb there? And if I can't, one of the things that's really nice about the way strength training works, if it's unilateral, meaning only one side is hurt and the other side is healthy, there's a decent amount of science that says if you train the working arm, the one that's not injured, there's a crossover effect due to the neurological pathways that your brain works with your muscles to fire those muscle groups. So there's still a lot of value in training your good arm or good limb if the other limb is injured because of that crossover. So, ask yourself, can I create a similar stimulus and can I get some of that, crossover strength by being able to use the non-affected limb? And, outside of that, am I paying attention to, all right, am I doing a little bit more recovery? So am I exposing myself potentially to more heat and more cold? Am I sleeping better? Am I paying attention to what I'm eating so that this injury doesn't linger? And then was there something in the way that I was training that potentially led me to be injured? Like, is my front rack terrible and a clean, and that's why I jam my wrist? And can I spend some time improving, maybe not my wrist mobility, but am I addressing my tricep or my lat or my subscap? And all of a sudden, things that, tend to flare up over and over again repeatedly because I don't pay attention to it for a while. I basically get healthy, train for a bit, get hurt, get pissed, and then rest, and then go back and do it again. Can I address some of the things that are causing me to have these injuries? So those are the 3 things I'd be paying attention to with someone who has an injury.
I had wrist surgery on my left wrist, and eventually they were like, yeah, let's do it on your right wrist. And I was like, nah, I'm good. So I've been through sort of those bouts of having pain there. I'm just sort of assuming that that's what you're talking about, and maybe not like a broken hand or something like that. Really important for the wrists, traction. So hanging from a pull-up bar. It can be done in other ways where you're actually holding weights, but again, central nervous system, not great for that. We want to make sure that range of motion is there. So really forcing the positions, really good front rack position, your, standard 4-way wrist stretch that most gymnasts do. And then one thing that's really cool about the community is I'm pretty sure it was Luca who came in and was doing the wrist curls before he did any snatches or overhead squats. And he had been somewhere with another games athlete and they were like, oh, my wrists always bothered me. Like, here is my routine of what I've done. And that's just sort of like where there's a will, there's a way type of thing. Athletes at the highest level, if they keep running into the same issues over and over, are going to figure out how to do it. So blood flow, traction, activation, all that stuff. The risks get pretty gnarly in some of the movements in CrossFit, and it can feel like you're really injured, and it could be more of a mobility, stability type of issue.
Only thing I want to add is what you said about positioning for other movements. Like a lot of people just coaching at the affiliate, people, especially if you like sit at a computer, you're typing all day, that sort of thing, like you're positioning in movements that like involve your wrist either directly or indirectly, like, you know, a front rack or overhead squat position, or even like a handstand push-up or something like that. If you don't have mobility, say in your thoracic spine or your shoulders, like upstream, downstream is kind of the code for improving like range of motion at a joint.
Eamon Nabil, what should I do to gain strength?
3 to 5 sets, 3 to 5 reps with 3 to 5 minutes between sets.
Yeah,
Next.
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, I think Eamon probably knows that lifting weights gets you stronger.
Hold on a second.
The problem is we have so many skill-based lifts that are not only used to get stronger, but also typically the ones that get tested. So maybe you are gaining strength in your back squats and your deadlifts, and then are not carrying the skill component, having the skill transfer to be able to do that. We need way more context than this to answer this question. But again, I mean, I don't know. That what Hunter said is just sort of the reality of the situation. It's a physics equation, and if you really care about it, you're going to figure out how to get stronger. And I can tell you right now, when other athletes come over to us from other programs, they're like, wow, that's a lot of lifting, that kind of thing. So I don't think if you're following the blog, you're not in a scenario where we're just sort of saying it doesn't matter as much to us. We're the type of programming, we're all in on conditioning. We don't care about the strength side of things. That's just not the case. So, do your lifts, do your accessory work. And if your skill lifts aren't pretty, make them pretty and then add weight.
Also, make sure you are sleeping enough and eating enough to support the adaptations you're trying to go after, because there are plenty of athletes that work so hard, but then don't pay attention to how much they're sleeping and how much they're fueling. This is something I am definitely guilty of myself. Like, try to get a lot of sleep, but sometimes the nutrition thing becomes on the back burner because you get busy with life, and all of a sudden you're like, sick, I worked out for 3 hours a day and ate like 50 grams of protein and 100 grams of carbs, and I'm wasting away and wondering why these things aren't improving. A lot of times athletes that don't pay attention to what they're putting in their body have no clue of what their actual input is, and it might not be consistent enough to allow you to get stronger.
The sleep thing's so important. You basically get free steroids for every time you enter a slow wave sleep cycle or deep sleep, and that happens predominantly at the front end of your sleeping, and also won't happen if you go to bed like significantly later. It's not like
body skips
if I go to bed at 1 a.m. like I'll just, and normally I go to bed at 9, like you're gonna miss out on the growth hormone dump that happens when you enter slow wave sleep. So free steroids for president.
Yeah, a little visual for you. Low testosterone hammer is the weightlifting and you are the nail. And then normal to high testosterone, that equation flips pretty quickly. We're spending these short times breaking muscle tissue down, then all this other time we're rebuilding. Or is it you break your tissues down, you don't recover, and then you break them down further? Guilty.
Zach Series asks, any chance daily programming can include post-training recovery?
So certain resources where we talk about or explain how to do these things would be really important to pay attention to. We've had different levels of engagement with this stuff through Discord, YouTube, the podcast, articles. I'm not going to be able to tell you what stretches that you need to do or how much time you need to spend with a Theragun. There are, even at the level of like a warm-up, there's so much nuance within what you need to do for yourself as an athlete. And I totally understand the idea of wanting someone else to help you be accountable with it. So, asking for advice on Discord when it's very specific, I am struggling with X. What do I do to achieve the outcome that I am looking for? That will help with accountability. Having someone that you stretch with at the gym. Hey, take a 9 a.m. class. Let's meet at 8:30. We're going to couch stretch. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. That mindset can be challenging to get into when you're on an island. So create some sort of support system there. And then eventually when it becomes habitual, then you just, sort of become more disciplined with it and you get it done. But we're always going to talk about recovery and recovery tools and talk to our athletes about that stuff, but it has to be specific to you for it to work well. So, there are some catch-alls. The pliability stuff is great. You're going to actually spend time in enough positions while you're rotating through and just following their regular programming that should help. And then eventually you can sort of know, through test and retest what stretches are helping you the most. But it's a very personal question. So find a accountability buddy and get after it.
Yeah, I really like the pliability mostly because they've gamified it. Now you can see your streaks, how much time you spend each week in it. And if you're someone like me who likes to have proof of concept that you're getting better at this stuff, nothing better than finding a way to gamify it, which is, why a partner is so good. They drag you into it, make you do it on the days you don't want to. And if you don't have something like that, you use one of those apps and all of a sudden you can see how much time you spend there and you can kind of connect the dots between, hey, I felt really good the last month. And oh, look, I spent, 300 minutes in doing mobility last month. Now this month I did 15 minutes and I felt terrible all month, or as proof of concept that I need to spend more time doing those things.
Is it a coincidence that it says YOU in his picture up in the top left there?
Andrew McFarland. Hey, bud. 23.1 predictions.
It's Drew's turn to ask this
jumping ahead.
Andrew McFarland, 23.1 predictions.
I went to high school with him. That's why I said that. 23.1.
I said it because he was nice enough to ask a question.
Predictions. Pain. I have no idea.
Humor the people.
Oh, man. I'm going to go with bar facing burpee,
deadlift,
ground overhead, chest to bar pull up.
Gross. Dickhead.
Ooh. That would be real shitty.
I agree. I think they like to set the tone.
I'm going to go deadlift, bar facing burpee, retest, ladder.
Power snatch, burpee box jump over. Short.
So like a 21:59 kind of vibe?
Nah,
you would.
Not accessible enough.
All right, 2016.
Not accessible enough. You guys over there with your high skill movements.
I said burpee deadlift.
High skill.
I didn't pay attention to what you said. He said chest to bar.
I did say chest to bar.
Yep.
Next.
I also just thought you were trolling, saying you wanted that workout to come back up.
I am.
Okay, fair.
All right, Ambrosia Moore, 18. For someone trying to get the next level in CrossFit, how do you recommend starting?
Can you provide context for what starting means? Do you want to start answering this question? Because you know who asked this?
So Ambrosia is someone that I met at the CrossFit Games with Sophie. She was a fan of Sophie Shaft, saw her compete at the CrossFit Games, was like, fuck, I want to do that. And I was like, awesome. And then she's like, I actually live in Maine. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. You live in Maine? Where is it? And she's like, I live near Wyndham. I'm like, excellent. We have a gym there. Come visit.
Were you pointing at her as
the whole
much?
time I was sticking my finger like this. No, I wasn't. But
you were aware of the term
you.
microaggression?
Pointing at you.
But
toxic turbulentity. Okay, keep going.
Basically, someone who had found CrossFit as a fan and is starting out from, essentially scratch is the way I've got it. I haven't actually had a chance to work with her in person. She was there for a small smidgen of the summer and then went off to school, so I didn't see her anymore. So this is someone more or less coming from pretty green in CrossFit, like is a fan of the sport, doesn't have a lot of experience and wants to basically start the track to,
you have as a relatively new CrossFitter, you have a golden opportunity to learn how to do things, and being at the Wyndham gym, like a Misfit gym where you know that you're going to get like coached on how to do things correctly. You have a golden opportunity to kind of maybe take a slower on-ramp approach. I don't mean literally like on-ramp class, but I mean like really take the time to learn how to move correctly, how to do the exercises correctly. Make sure that if you're somebody, is she younger, like teenager, like as well as Sophie?
I want to say she's probably a freshman or sophomore in college.
Okay, so you probably don't have like a massive background or history of like either injuries. You probably move well enough to not have like these massive, someone who starts CrossFit as like a 40-year-old, you've got a lot of time spent in, whether it's sitting at a desk, basically like you have a lot of undoing of certain habits and positions and like physical limitations to work around. As somebody who's younger, you probably don't have quite as many of those. So you again have like this perfect opportunity to learn how to do things correctly, to get like move in such a way that gets you in the correct like positions, like learning how to, as silly as it sounds, like perfect your air squat. There's just so many people who either come from athletic backgrounds who jump into CrossFit and just by nature of either being competitive or being good enough to kind of really get after it and get into it, they skip over some of the more fundamental aspects that will play in their favor in the much longer term. And you don't have those to kind of overcome. So my recommendation is to go to Misfit Gym Wyndham, take affiliate class for, as long as you are still seeing progress, and only then you ask Sherb or one of the coaches, like, hey, what's the competitor extra from the Team Misfit affiliate programming once you've kind of established that base of conditioning and strength to continue building. But as someone who's just getting started, man, you have a really golden opportunity to learn how to do things correctly so that you don't, 5 years down the road, you're like, man, I really wish I started doing this correctly instead of having to undo some poor movement patterns or some poor habits that you established because you wanted to kind of get after it too quickly.
I'll go a little bit higher level, very similar though, and just say, just do not try to outmaneuver the natural order of things. It takes time. It takes a lot of work. I had a conversation with a like really, really high level athlete last week looking to switch programs, and they said explicitly, I know it's going to take me 5 or 6 years to get to the point that I want to. And like, you don't want to creep them out and start clapping on a Zoom. But just understanding what
you do that pretty often.
Understanding what it takes to get from point A to point B is so important. And the good thing is within our ecosystem, it's very much like you can go to a Team Misfit gym, and until you are obliterating the programming, you don't add in that competitor extra. And then once you start doing that, you have this existential crisis of, am I now a hatchet athlete in open gym? And am I going to be able to recruit people to train with me? That whole deal. And then you're absolutely obliterating that, and you're flirting with where you want to be quarterfinals wise, almost semifinals. Then you probably need a remote coach, and potentially following Hatchet again or MFT to get to semifinals of the CrossFit Games. I know it sounds lofty, but the people who actually take the time and are patient, that's how they do it.
Yeah, my thoughts always go to build your energy system. So get your conditioning up, be able to go short, medium, and long, and then really give a shit about how you're moving and everything else. And if you do those two things for a long enough time, you'll progress at the rate that'll basically outweigh everybody else who tries to make the leaps that you were just talking about. So energy systems, and really care about how you move, and, come to the affiliate and be like, how can I get the best workout today? Which is typically what I recommend to everyone kind of starting out with the gym, whether that's competing at the CrossFit Games or trying to be healthy. It's like, ask your coach how to get the best workout each day, and we will help set you up for the best possible progression on a long enough time scale that you don't get hurt, but you see progress continually.
Is it me?
Yeah,
it is me, and I already answered this question, but we can shout out the change again. I love the Discord channel, but how come we don't have a real leaderboard to put up our scores? Misfit Athletics X Fitter coming soon, free with all memberships. We did it.
We did it.
I'm still going to make you guys do final thoughts, even though I'm about to pee my pants.
Well, I would say thanks for the questions.
Take your time, guys.
Thanks for the questions. And I really do think people took the time to be thoughtful with like what actually would help them, but also potentially, or were brave enough to throw that out there, because there are probably at least 15 other people who are thinking the exact same thing that didn't have the gall to say it just yet. And then again, the more that people do this, the more other people are going to see it's okay and ask more questions, and we can help move the community along more and more. So No, I like these Q&A podcasts. I think they're a nice kind of peek behind the curtain of like what's in your all of your minds when you're thinking about your training. And the more we can know about you and the way you're thinking about training, the more useful we can be as, programmers and coaches here. So I'd like to do more of these, but, would love to see more questions next time.
I would love to answer your questions in person at Misfit Athletics training camp.
True.
Because we can get into the more, most of the times these questions are like, well, I'm going to provide a general answer that'll hopefully help more people than just you exclusively. And a lot of times that's just because additional context that's necessary to provide you with a specific answer isn't there. But you come to a Misfit Athletics training camp, you get the opportunity to do Q&A on the last day with the coaches and whatnot. And then probably more importantly, we talked about it last week, is like you get so much more out of asking questions and talking to fellow campers who, because ultimately, 50 of you are still probably going to have more information than maybe just the three of us in a conversation like that. And then you also just learn to ask questions you didn't even know to ask. And you get those answers as well. So just a little plug for training camp.
If the word discipline makes you think of your mean uncle or some coach who screamed in your face when you were a kid, we can switch over to the word habitual. I'm wearing a shirt right now that is about to be dropped that says little by little on it. This already dropped. We're in the future, we're in the past. We're everywhere, you're never there. Pound for pound, I'm best ever come around here, excluding nobody. Look what I embody, soul of a hustler. All right. The Little by Little collection is out now, and more than anything, I'm just obsessed with this concept and this mindset of in the actual moment, can you continue to put one foot in front of the other? Oh, I can't do burpees. Okay, you can't do burpees, but can you step up? Can you bring your feet together? Can you hop? Can you turn? Can you throw yourself back down onto the ground? Just one foot in front of the other, all that stuff. We talked a bit about the idea of the natural order of things. That is the natural order of things. You have to just keep at it. You have to show up every day and get after it. And
I was going to ask you if you saw this, Drew, before we end the podcast. There was a great post by Justin Sua, and he was showing the growth over a long enough time run. It's this giant exponential curve.
Yeah.
But then there was a magnifying glass on one section of it, and it's this type of stuff, up and down, up and down, up and down, and just realize that that's what life is. Ups and downs, ups and downs. But the more consistent you are with your training and how you live your life, the more you're going to see that curve tick up and up. And I think that's really what the Little by Little collection is all about. Is that
when in doubt, zoom out.
Yep.
It's from the stock market. Works a lot better with applying to real life. We do it?
Stonks.
You still into that?
Yeah, we did it. What, stonks?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Big stonk.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast, and thank you to our show sponsors. You can get this Little by Little shirt or the other shirts that the other guys on this podcast are wearing at sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word Misfit, properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit. You can't use the code word Misfit at sharpentheaxeco, but you know what to do. And last but not least, head to misfit.camp and get signed up for quarterfinals prep camp. March 4th and 5th, join us. March 3rd for 23.3 at Misfit Gym Portland. We'll see you next week.